I have my beautiful soul sister, Jill Heiman, here with me today. And I really, am feeling called to really offer anything that I possibly can to the different groupings of women. Some of us are stay-at-home moms, some of us are multiple, entrepreneurs, multiple businesses, and many are in some sort of system, in some sort of corporate setting. And that is why I felt called to invite Jill here today. If you want to say hello.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Sisters, so good to be here. Oh, Lindsay, thank you for bringing me on. It's like, I'm just so fired up about this and supporting women that find themselves in corporate or in a system, and it's just not feeling aligned anymore. So thank you to you and to everyone watching. Hello.
Yeah, and we actually met, gosh, how many years ago? With COVID, it makes it maybe 3 now. Has it been
Yeah,
3
when I
years?
lived in Florida. So, I mean, we did like that first workshop when workshops were a thing at like in person.
Yeah, it was fun. We were asked to actually co-teach college students on vitality and aliveness and wellness and all of these things. And our visions have expanded, and we've continued to grow in our circles out, like continue to expand our sisterhood. And I really wish that I had somebody like a visionary like yourself, who's a badass corporate woman and a badass visionary and a soul-led woman on a mission. Like, you really embody all of these things around like what's not working in the system, and how to like still remain in corporate and to continue to expand, and to still, to me, it feels like being authentic self, like being aligned, being connected, even in a system that doesn't always serve us as women. And I see we're in this like dismantling phase right now. And I think we're in a really beautiful time where we get to create a new reality and how we get to show up in these environments. So with that, if there's anything you want to share about yourself, about your work, about like something tangible that maybe some of the women can take today, and then anything that you would like to share in terms of what you have coming up, that'd be great.
Thank you. You said so many things that are so crucial. So, a lot of you probably don't know me, but I am Jill Heiman. As Lindsay said, I am a mindset mentor and vision coach. I've also been in and still am in corporate. It's been over 15 years now. So I've held a sales role for quite a long time and have really found, I launched my business, Awake Journey, my coaching business back in 2018, simultaneously while holding this corporate role. And so it's really become clear to me that anything's possible. You just get to say yes. So if you are a woman that's tuning in and listening to this, you find yourself in a system, whatever it might be, healthcare, government. I've talked to so many women, or a corporate, like the boxed corporate in a role, but you're just not feeling aligned and you're feeling like you're overworked. You're probably on the edge of burnout. You are not feeling valued. You're not feeling like what you have to offer is being met, right? So that's where we get in a lot of my teachings. We really just start to unravel and create what I call a circle self, getting away from this organization chart that we've unconsciously placed ourselves in, and all of our gifts in these boxes. Our self-care, right? Like, here's my work, and then all of these things. Here's my self-care under this neat and tidy box, and I can only rest when I've worked 9 to 5 or like whatever it is. And it's just not working anymore. And Lindsay, I know, like, we've been connected for quite some time now in the evolution. And like, I love so deeply what you're sharing of the embodiment. Like, that's one of the key pieces, dancing and getting back into our bodies. And it's just, the time is now. And we've been saying it, but like, really, if you are a woman that's in the system, you can create whatever your soul is longing for you to create simultaneously. And I have an upcoming workshop that's going to be really supportive. And so I'm going to give a little nugget of a tool that you can use to practice with. Shall you be called to come and hang out at this workshop? So it's happening on Thursday, this Thursday, February 3rd at 5 p.m. Eastern. I'll drop the link in the comments to RSVP. But between now and then, know that this vision that you have is yours. It's unique to you, whether it's to start a side business, to start this idea, maybe it's a product, you've had this thought, maybe you've already created it, maybe you've gotten the patent for it, maybe it's this role within the company you're already in that's just not created yet, like it's not here, but you know that you can step into it. You're going to be met with, however big your vision is, you're going to be met with that same force of fear, of doubt, of the judgment, of I can't do this, the self-criticism, the self-sabotaging, all of these things. And what has helped me and been so beneficial in a practice that I work on with my clients is mirror work. And it's really sitting in front of the mirror like this, you know, and looking at yourself deeply in your eyes and allowing whatever wants to come forward. You know, it might not feel comfortable at first. It probably won't. You might only last for like 1 minute. 1 minute sitting with yourself in front of the mirror can sometimes be like, whoa, hold up. So sit there and see what comes forward. Have your journal next to you and allow the things to come out. Like whatever the voice is, you can't do this. Like, who do you think you are? Okay, take a deep breath. Allow all the things. Like, there's no way you're going to accomplish this. You don't have enough time in the day. Whatever all of the things that want to come out, let them be voiced. Say them to yourself in the mirror. And then just take some deep breaths in through your nose, out through your mouth, come back into your body. I know you all know how to do this. You're in this tribe that Lindsay has beautifully created. Come back into your body. Allow some stillness. Allow your all-knowing, allow your soul to speak now. And just hold, nourish, hug that piece of you where that fear is. And ensure that it's safe. Like, you're okay. I got you this time. I hear you. Try that on. Because you're going to be met. And I know you know this, Lindsay, like you will be met with the exact same energetic vibration that's going to meet you and try and throw you off track. And that's one of the things that we talk about is how to be one with your fears in my upcoming workshop. We also are going to talk about building your vision with clarity, how to align and decide on your vision, the power of fundamental choice, and ultimately, like how you can step confidently with such boldness into this vision that your soul is longing for. So I'm so fired up and I'm so excited to offer these tools for women just feeling stuck in the corporate space.
Thank you, beautiful. There was so much you shared that it was like, download. And it's so interesting because like, we haven't even connected fully in like where your vision has taken you and my vision, like, I want to take this workshop just because my vision is evolving. And I was talking to our business coach, Sasha, about this the other day of like, wow, even 6 months ago, things are shifting and it's because the collective is shifting. But I no longer have the fear that I used to have in that shift around, oh my gosh, like my identity is shifting as I'm evolving. And so is my business. And so is how I'm creating impact. And I think that's what we're seeing in the collective. It's the choice point of, am I going to transmute fear? Like, am I going to allow the fear to consume me? Or am I going to like use this as momentum in order for it to propel me into this vision? And I think you're absolutely right with the hierarchy, right? Like that's such a masculine patriarchal approach, and women thrive in circle. Like that's how the world, I feel like, gets to be rebirthed, is in this shoulder to shoulder, is in us having compassion, working in harmony, right? Like still having wisdom, like being wisdom keepers, but still honoring all parties involved and allowing all of us to have a voice, right? And allowing all of us to co-create this reality. So I'm excited for what you have to offer and what you get to share. And I will say also, the mirror work is something that I do resist a lot. I generally only do it in retreats or programs, or when I'm like really noticing that I'm lacking intimacy with myself. And it's so revealing. It's so revealing. And it's because like, it's the places that we go when we don't want to be with self. So of course, looking in the mirror, right? It like brings up everything about our appearance, right? About the self-doubt, the self-criticism. So I am going to actually take you up on that. And I am going to, at least until the workshop, give it a few days and see how I do and see what opens up for me, because there's always more. And I think that's the fun. Like the more we can just be in the fun of the evolution and the change that's happening on the planet, and letting our vision excite us and not let the fear consume us, that's where the magic happens. It just becomes a little bit easier. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm so excited. The world needs this.
Well, and that's the thing of what you said, right? Everything is a circle. And when we do step into this, for those women that are finding yourself in a system, you then get to show up, like Lindsay said, authentically. And there are so many things, opportunities, possibilities available for you. You can't see it yet because you're showing up in this compartmentalized self to your work, to your job, to your day job. So, you know, I can attest, and that's why I'm just so called to support and help corporate women, because I've seen the shifts while simultaneously doing it in my corporate role. And yes, we need it, because we need those women in the systems so we can start being the change, and the system then gets to change.
Yeah. And of course, I absolutely don't doubt, or I'm not sitting here like trying to retrace my steps, but perhaps if I did have this awareness when I was in corporate, like maybe I would have stayed longer, and, or maybe I would have actually been more a part of the change that gets to happen in the male dominated, you know, masculine dominated engineering role that I was in. And of course, I'm trusting it all and the timing of it all. But, you know, like there are parts of me that just kept thinking, this is not sustainable. Like, this is not sustainable for motherhood. This is not sustainable for how women, like the burnout that I was seeing in our bodies literally failing was just tremendous. And the small amount of women that were actually in the industry we were seeing leaving in the masses. And, you know, we get to have women in the system and in these corporate roles in order for us to be a part of the harmony that gets to happen. So I absolutely I'm so excited for what you're offering. And you are a badass woman in corporate. So let me just attest to Jill, like she's walking the walk and talking the talk, right? Like she's doing the work. She's not just sitting here, you know, from the sidelines. Like she's currently in it. And I'm really, really pumped. So yes, Jill, you will drop the link in the comments. Is there anything else that you want to add before we pop off? I so appreciate you.
I so appreciate you. You know what's coming through, Lindsay, is because this is my stretch to grow, ask for support. And you know, the women that I've talked to that are in these corporate roles, one of the number one support is accountability. We're really good, and I can say we, because I've been in corporate for so long, we're really good at masculine. You are a high achiever. You're really good at getting things done, but where the struggle can come in is getting things done for yourself, getting things done for your vision. So ask for the support. And this is one of the ways I'm so honored and in gratitude to help and support is through this workshop. So thank you for this time to get to connect. It's always so fun.
Absolutely. And, you know, I'm assuming that people can direct message you as well. So you'll see, you know, Jill in the comments when she puts the link. And then of course you can add any questions, and let's just keep this conversation going, as that's been a lot of my shares in the group, even as of late, even just in my relationship with my husband, and like really the downloads that are coming in around the paradigm, and literally like like we're not doing anything. The paradigm is dismantling, like it's literally self-combusting. So we're in this beautiful time to literally create a reality in a way that's sustainable for all of humanity. And that feels so freaking exciting. So thank you. I love you. Drop any questions in the comments, and Jill and I are happy to support. Much love.
Hello, welcome back into Corporate Women Rising, where we are on a mission to create a new way of being in leadership. And in this, we are sharing tips and strategies to support you to ditch grind mentality, unlock your superpowers, so you can finally live on purpose. Hello, I'm Jill Heiman. I am your host for this journey. I'm a mindset mentor, vision coach, CEO and founder of Awake Journey, and I support women just like you to find clarity and connect to your vision so it becomes your new reality. And today, who's up for creating some magic? Because I'm really thrilled to bring in Lindsay Martin Ellis. Hello.
Hello, so happy to be here with you all.
So a little about Lindsay, let me tell you, she is an intuitive coach, feminine embodiment and somatic teacher, human design guide, and executive director for Beauty Counter. And I'm thrilled to really dive in today with you. But before we do that, share with all of the beautiful souls out there, what's your mission? What are you up to in the world?
My mission is constantly dynamic and evolving and shifting, but what's coming through in this moment is really allowing all beings, but in particular, I really love working with women in embodying wholeness and really getting back into our bodies again, walking in wholeness, just really owning the truth of who we are in all facets of self so that we can really step into alignment to really own all the parts of ourself that we've disowned so that we can walk really everybody home. And that is currently my mission, is really moving out of the headspace and into the body first and foremost, so that we can make decisions and move through life from that attuned and aligned place.
And share with us, because I know that you've had your own unique journey in the corporate space. And so what is your experience with this whole like hustle culture and like, sister, just grind, grind. You're going to climb this invisible ladder. Like, talk to me about that.
Yeah, well, I think it's a lot of bullshit. I think it served its purpose, but what I really believe to be true is that we were modeled this way of being. Like, it's nobody's fault, but what we've seen, especially as we're moving out of the industrial age into the information age, it was very much like trading time for dollars. It was very much about scarcity mindset, right? It was very much about like, I need to feed my family. And I think a lot of our conditioning, right, through the years, like as we've moved from the boomer population and so on and so forth, we're now breaking a lot of the conditioning again, just as part of evolution. And so I think we all move from that like raw, this no longer serves me, like I'm going to move from this grind mentality into this new way of being. And now I think I'm recognizing how much this served and how we're actually, all of us, if you're watching this right now, are the edge walkers. Like, we're really on the cutting edge of shifting from this really competitive, and I need to beat everyone in order to succeed, in order to be on top, in order to support myself and support my family, into this more trusting, receptive, magnetic approach, which can sometimes be a little bit scary. So I think we're really we're in a playground right now of just trying things on and seeing what works. And that feels like a fun place to be. But it does take a little bit of practice, right? To move from that, okay, this isn't working, I'm going to go to my edge, to now being in more of the trying things on and that curiosity and wonderment of, what would it look like to work in this way? What would it look like to show up in this way? How do I get to feel in my business? How do I get to earn, right, and receive from doing what I love? So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. Well, tell us more about like your journey, because I know it was one, you spent time in the corporate space in a very masculine dominated, male dominated field. And like, how was that navigation? Obviously now we can all have hindsight and feel into that, but you know, because you lived it and you breathed it.
Yeah. Well, what I recognize now is my decision so I was an environmental engineer. I went to college, one of the top engineering schools in the country, University of Florida, really chose my major and chose this role, this corporate role at 17 years old. And I felt like I didn't even know who I was. I feel like now I recognize I made decisions about my future and my profession based on like, can I do a role that, right, like I want to be the best. Not only do I want to be the best, I want to do it better than a man can, right? Or I want to have a role that's lucrative, that I can grow into, that I can, make all of this money and do all of these things that people really are telling me that I cannot do. And so I paid the price for that, but I also recognize that it was all on purpose. And now I look back and I recognize really, it was almost 10 years in corporate. And the reason why I left corporate, which we can get into, is I had failing health. My body was breaking down. I had a lot of hormonal health issues. And to me, it was the world, the universe, spirit, source, however we want to call it, whatever that universal intelligence is, showing me that I'm out of alignment, showing me that this served its purpose to show me what's not working into what now gets to work for me. So it was a very male dominated industry. There was a lot of proving energy. There was a lot of people pleasing. I was overworking. I was working more than my male counterparts. I felt like I just needed to do it better and I needed to prove myself. A lot of it was actually self-induced. Like I actually co-created those experiences, probably from conditioning, probably from just, fear of feeling like I was going to be behind. And ultimately, I still use all, right? So many of you that are watching this are in corporate. There may be some moving out of corporate, some curious. Every experience, every certification, every moment of that journey, I still use, I still remember, and it still continues to help me on my path in my intimate relationships and in my business.
Yeah, I think that's a really good reminder to all of us, because we can get like very blinded, like just looking down a pipe. And it's like, that's a fear way, right? Because it's a lot of the words you're using, like prove, lucrative, money, time equals money, right? Like if you all are out there, like how does that energy feel, right? These words are coming and it's like this, for me, it's like, right? And there is the space in recognizing how actually did this serve? How did this serve? Because you all out there, wherever you're at, like Lindsay was saying, you're co-creating in moment to moment. And so let's bring up this idea around, wow, okay, what does that mean? What does it mean I'm co-creating? What does it mean that I created this right now? Because wherever you're at in your path, if you are aware that you are the creator of your life, you might have heard some of this, but like, let's tap this open.
Yeah, I think what's coming through in this moment is how we feel is an indicator of what's coming next. And so I feel what that means is, right, all of it is welcome. And I believe we create these experiences to really show us what we deserve, what we like, what we don't like, what serves us, what doesn't serve us. And that's where I think we can really start to own that we are the creator of our life. I do think it's important to not bypass though, right? And I think when we hear co-creation, a lot of times there can be, I think the terminology we hear is toxic positivity. The terminology doesn't matter, but it really takes owning and recognizing and feeling, right? Like, what does it feel like for me? I had failing health. I was exhausted. I felt like, oh my gosh, is this the role that I'm going to play forever? Is this really going to be my life? It felt like Groundhog Day. And I could have just played victim to that, right? I could have just fell in the trap of suffering. Instead, what I did was I really felt all of it. I really started to open up to, wow, how is this happening in my life? Why is this happening in my life? Why am I feeling this way? And I started to meet parts of myself that I didn't even know. I also started to notice parts of myself that I disowned, places that I would stuff emotions in the basement. And that's really where I started to recognize the co-creation. I think when we can meet the emotions, when we can meet the sensations and the feelings, be at one with them, walk in our wholeness, then we can move into that space of co-creation, that space of really recognizing that we are just walking each other home and the universe does have our back, right? We hear all of these terms, but it becomes the felt experience where we really start to trust in our path. And all that I really did was I started to recognize this doesn't feel good. How can I meet that and recognize why this doesn't feel good? And how can I move towards something that feels better? And to me, I think that's the first place to start when we want to really start to play in the realm of co-creation.
It's what I'm hearing is the consistent, curious inquiry. And I'll share, and and some of you may know out there, I recently left corporate. And so, spent nearly 2 decades of my life in this space. And what it started to be towards the end, because it was getting clearer and clearer that it was time to fully come into my company. And I can't tell you how many times I used that, Lindsay, of like, Jill, okay, I co-created this. What's there here for me to learn? Because it wasn't still yet locked in and aligned of like, you leave now. If if you hear that like inner voice of, it's pretty clear for me, I will hear if I'm tuned in of like, it's time now. And so I just kept asking, well, what's there to learn today? What do I get to receive today? How do I show up in service today? And that went on for 2 years. And I stayed in the role for 2 years, keeping being, and so there is that possibility to inquire and ask these questions. But what I want to hone in on is the emotion piece, because what I'm seeing and talking to lots of women in corporate in leadership roles is the bypassing of emotions and the projection. And there is too much toxic positivity. And like, let's call it out, because it gets to stop. It like really fires me up when someone wants to come forward, share emotions. No, it's okay. No, it's okay. So as a leader, and you're out there watching this, what are beginning practices? Like, yes, there's awareness, but this, like, if you've never felt, if you are like bypassing emotions, you can raise your hand. Where do you start?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Well, all of the answers lie in presence. And so when we're actually bypassing emotions, we are really pulling ourselves away further from presence. Honestly, what I teach my clients is probably the quickest and most efficient way to get back in our bodies and out of our emotionally charged response, to be able to feel it, to process it, to move through it so we don't bypass and so we don't numb and avoid, is breath. Breath is the first thing that we did when we came into this world. It's the last thing that we are going to do, right? When we leave this incarnation. And what I believe breath really does is it connects us to the moment, right? Like new moment, new moment, new moment. And so there's a way that we can then feel an emotion that actually gets us out of story, that actually gets us out of the emotionally charged response and allows us to actually bear witness to it, to be with it, to access our inner child, then to allow the nurturing parts of ourselves to come in and self-soothe. And so when we take a breath, and I love sharing this piece because I think it's really supportive. I think about the seasons, right? We think about the cycles of life. Emotions are cycles. Emotions are a wave, just like the seasons, just like the lunar cycle, just like how the sun rises every morning and sets every evening. And so when we take that inhale in, what are we doing? We're creating new life, right? Like we're literally in the spring energy. Then we can pause at the top and we're in summer. We're holding that expansion. We're actually holding that space. Then what we do is we exhale. We're back in autumn, right? We're back in perhaps tying up loose ends, nesting, really expelling all that energy. And then this is the most important piece, the winter, the fertile void, the pause between the exhale and the inhale. this is actually where the magic happens. This is where we can actually be at one with our emotions and really feel in order to move through. And I think it's really important. This came through before you asked this question, but I'm sure you can probably relate, Jill. Once I left corporate, there was a whole new round of initiations, a whole new deepening of sensations, emotions, stories, just places from my past, right? Like places where I was triggered, places where I was in fear of being seen, of being vulnerable, of that next threshold of income. And so I think it's really important that we recognize this is why we chose to be here, is to feel so that we can continue to have choice. And it never goes away. But when we're in that place, it becomes easier. So I love the breath piece because I think it's the quickest way for us to recognize, is this emotion mine? Is it not mine? Am I in story? Am I not in story? Can I be with this emotion without unleashing onto someone else or having self-deprecating behaviors? And it's really the most effective way to feel without having it take you in this downward spiral of suffering.
And I love the logical, the piece, the visualization you offer for all of you really set in mind, and you need to feel that, right? So this can allow you something to connect to of like the seasons and Lindsay's like diagram that you can visualize on the breath. So I love that. And I heard the piece in there. Let's go to inner child, because this is, it's something that's out there. And if you're in self-development, you might be hearing like, oh, my inner child, or this needs that, or that needs, and what are questions? Like, how can you even understand? Because there are so many layers of self, which we could get in. There's a lot of layers. There's shadow, there's ego, there's like all of these pieces. But a lot of time wounding, and I love you bring up inner child, it does start from like our very young experiences. How can the women out there, like, how can we begin to reparent? No matter what age you are, it's a continuous thing.
Yeah. Thank you for asking this. And I notice I always like to, because, previous engineer, I very much love living in the intuitive flow, surrendered state. And my mind really likes to have a solid foundation. So what I think is important to share is from about 0 to 7, 8 years old, we don't have the ability to critically think. So even if you're watching this and you feel like I had a great childhood and my parents are still together and I got everything that I wanted, there's still a lot that happens that many of us don't consciously recall, that when an event happens, we automatically file it into this, right? Like maybe you lived in a home that you weren't allowed to have any sort of anger, right? Like raising your voice was not an option. And so maybe now there's a lot of anger that's trapped inside of our bodies. And from about like 8 to even 16, 17, we don't have the ability to critically think. So there's still from 0 to essentially adulthood at around 18 years old, we're really just so lucid and we're so just fragile, and we're really like a sponge of, if this happens, then this means this. And that automatically becomes our program. That automatically becomes our way of being. And that's where the shadow comes in. That's where the ego comes in. That's where we have our armor. That's where we protect. That's where we don't really show and own all parts of ourselves. So I really think it's important for us to recognize scientifically, right? There's a lot that we've stored within us, basically because of how our brain develops, that then forms our personality, right? Our personality gets formed as we weave through life, and our parents say, don't touch that, it's hot, or you can do this, or you can't do that. And I do feel like if you're watching this, we all get to that point where we're like, wait a second, is that even really true? And so again, I think coming back to that curiosity of when we allow ourselves, let's just say, to connect to the breath, let's say all of a sudden somebody projects onto you and it automatically reminds you of a relationship with your older sister and you're in this emotionally charged space, can you take a moment to connect to the breath, recognize why this pattern is coming up, so that then we can gently begin to reparent, right? Like, that's not my story. This isn't how I want to show up anymore. I want to respond from love. I want to respond from discernment. I want to respond from sovereignty and not from that emotionally charged place. So I'll just kind of leave it at that. And I hope that that answered that piece around, goes back to curiosity and feeling. And that's when we can gently begin to reparent or re-nurture ourselves into what feels aligned now, so that I'm not constantly repeating patterns of calling in either relationships that are coming up for us to heal or how dis-ease ends up in our body.
Yeah. And the piece about being, you know, the trigger where you feel however it is that your body, it might be tense, it might be like panic, anxiety. What can we do when we are in a meeting? You know, I think this is a lived experience. It's happening. It's happened virtual, obviously, over the last 2 years. Now we're going back to like in meeting space. And so how can you, when you don't have the time, right? Because maybe you're presenting and someone says something that like you feel the trigger. Well, you might not have the space in that moment to like, oh, okay, this was the childhood and my sister. So how do we allow like the remembering of, okay, I'll come back to that later. So the bypassing is not what we're doing, right? Or the self like demoralizing, whatever that might be, the drinking or the Netflix.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, because right, we're humans, we have responsibilities, many of us are parents and taking care of people and other things and vocation. So again, it comes back to the breath, right? So right, I love that you presence that, because what's important is later on, if you can't in that moment, create the space to explore, especially if you notice, because this is about noticing sensations. We know that feeling when somebody says something and we feel that gut reaction and we feel the contraction and we feel like we want to hide. And so I'll go back to the breath again, just taking a deep breath in and out, which is so powerful, because often, let's say we're presenting, we think we need to get through it and get through it and get through it. But the pause, right? The sacred pause to be able to come back to the present moment. Because if we keep going in that presentation, what are we doing? We're actually not in our bodies. We're not connected to the here and now. And so we black out, we leave our bodies. We're literally just going and going and going. And we don't even remember often that experience. So the breath actually connects us to the vagus nerve, which then communicates from the body to the brain that I'm safe, everything's okay, I can come back to the present moment, I'm not in fight, flight, or freeze, I'm not going to die, right? You could have someone that triggers you that takes you back to a memory subconsciously or unconsciously that puts you in that state of not feeling safe. So the breath is the quickest way. And I would say also in that moment, if you could just imagine being held by the earth, because oftentimes when we're triggered, we leave our bodies, and feeling grounded, feeling connected to the earth, coming back to our bodies is the most efficient way. And again, the toxic positivity piece would be to just do that and to not actually meet that again, but to really create the space, even if it's once a week, right? To be like, okay, wow, my boss, this is coming up in every meeting. What's underneath that? I'm really starting to explore there.
Yeah. And there was something that you said, and it might come back to me around the it'll come back to me, the breath. It will come. It was good. But it's this connection of breath and the choosing not to bypass. This is what it is when you are in your leadership and and Lindsay's like, connect to breath, right? And so you have that practice. This is an awesome practice to enhance your leadership. If you are an executive, if you are in the C-suite, or if you're just starting out in your career or whatever role you are currently in, notice, like, why not just try this on? Right? What Lindsay just shared. You're in the middle of a presentation, and instead of talking like this fast, and I'm talking, here we go, we're on to this, da, 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 like, that's how I presented at one point in time in my life. I'm sure you used to too. Just take some breaths in between your two sentences. And then notice, right? How did that presentation feel? How were you received? How was the experience? Did you receive what you were asking for in it? And there's just a lot available in that breath presence.
Yeah, especially if you're a classic ummer, right?
Ooh, that's
Yeah. Can you create can you create that relationship with the breath in place of the because oftentimes that is just one example of how we're trying to fill a void, right? How we're trying to move through something, right? We just want to move on to the next thing. And the breath is what will create the spaciousness that allows, right, that receptivity, right, that allows us to feel safe and present. That's how people receive us. That's how people trust us. That's how we make the deal. That's how we negotiate the contracts. So I love that, right? It's just like, let's try it on in your next meeting and see if you notice a shift or if you receive feedback in a different way.
Yeah, let's jump into all things receiving, all things flow. Because it is an entanglement, and when we have been programmed in a system that is really not built to support the ebbs and flow of our feminine nature. So realizing that, okay, but now how do we even open up to be able to receive? Because there's a lot of closed off, there's a lot of defense, there's a lot of armor because we thought we had to do that. You're in a male dominated field. I was in sales, for my whole career, and some points the only woman, and it's just this built up armor. But how do we begin to just unthaw? If you're a frozen ice block, to just unthaw.
Yeah. Well, I think going back to the it's not our fault mentality, right? So our hormones cycle roughly every 28 days as women, and our male counterparts cycle every 24 hours, I apologize. And so we are not meant to perform the same tasks every day. And again, recognizing that even though we may not, and especially in a corporate role, we're in a mold and a model, just to have that awareness as the first step of, okay, wow, as women, especially in the States, entered into the workplace, right? In the 50s, 60s, and 70s, as we started to see that shift, we were dropped into a model that was really set up for success for our male counterparts and not for us. And so to have that awareness of, okay, I'm not alone. I'm not meant to feel the same way every single day, right? Like hormonally, we have 4 different stages of our cycle that really allow us to be in that ebb and flow. And so I think it's really powerful once we have that awareness of, I'm not meant to perform the same tasks every day. What do I have autonomy over in my corporate role? How can I set myself up for success? For example, if you currently have a menstrual cycle, tracking that and giving yourself space, even in that corporate role, maybe you ask for more support at home. Maybe you're not stacking your calendar, right, to where you're doing all of this outward networking. Maybe if there's some optional things, you choose to be like, wow, I have a really full week in corporate. And in order for me to receive, to be replenished, to be nourished, I get to create the space. So again, it's back to that autonomy. It's back to that I am the co-creator. We are not victim to our external circumstances. We do have the power to ask for help. We do have the power to potentially go to our bosses and say, hey, I think there's actually a better way to do this, right? Right, how can we be solution oriented so that we can then be able to be in that receptivity? So I feel that once we're in that space of, okay, I'm not alone. How can I set myself up so I'm resourced? That's where the receptivity comes in. And that's honestly where we begin to even outshine our male counterparts. That's how we're able to hold more. That's how we're able to be magnetic and move through life and move through our professions in this way. So to me, in order to really be in receptivity, we get to be fully resourced. And through that, we get to have the awareness of what's working for us, what's not working for us, and how to really ask for support from those either seen or unseen, right? To really create the spaciousness that allows for the receptivity. It's not about adding more, it's about taking away.
And that is probably maybe pinging some of you out there, like, hold up, how can I take it away? I can't take anything away. So what are these 4 phases? And if a woman is going to look at your calendar, and we're hearing you say, like, take it away, and then the receptivity, and you are going to actually expand in the contraction, there is expansion. And so what are the 4 phases? And if a woman's looking at her calendar, like, how would be the best way to plan throughout our ebb and flow?
And don't let me forget the offering at the end. I actually have another offering on my website that helps support women through this. So we can even add it, or, I can share my website for if those want to go deeper. We can absolutely explore it. So again, I love that I talked about the breath in the season. So I'll probably start at the fertile void. I'll start at the pause. That's winter, right? That's when that's where we start day 1, which is our menstrual cycle. If you've had a hysterectomy or you've been through menopause, you can follow the lunar cycle as well. Oftentimes, once you follow the lunar cycle, you actually start to know hormonally exactly where you are, right? Because once we're present to it, we actually start to know the cycle that we're in, even if we don't have a bleed. So menstrual cycle, just think about it. What is that? Winter. That's why I love the analogies. We have support in our cosmology, right? All throughout our environment and in nature with our bodies that are showing us exactly how we get to be. So that is a time that's more inward. We're not going to be as outward facing, right? We're going to require a lot more rest. This is a lot more time for intuitive time, perhaps research, right? Perhaps really just being with yourself and maybe just exploring, what do I want? What new goals do I have? What new desires do I have? Really creating that inward time. Before I move forward, I think it's also really important to notate that even a 5% shift, even shifting one thing, whether it's your workout schedule, your work schedule, your family schedule, in this way will really start to open up a lot of capacity. So the intention with this is not to say, this is impossible and I have to do it all. It's to just start with, what would be one area of your life that you could try on ebbing and flowing and seeing how it supports you. Then what do? We inhale. We're in the follicular phase, right? We're in the new phase. What happens in springtime? New life, right? We want to think about, this is really a time to start new creations. There's a lot more play. This would be a new time to go to a new workout class or go to a new networking event, right? You're really embracing the new, and your energy and your hormones actually support that. Then we move into summer, which is our ovulation phase, the most outward time. So this is the time, if you get to set up a moment where you get to really be on, have the big presentation, right? Be able to really be seen, be on calls, really be in outward communication, this would be the time to do so. And then what do? We hit our peak, just like anything, everything's a cycle. We go into our luteal phase, just like fall and autumn. We start nesting, we start tying up loose ends. We're more inward again. Maybe we're in the spreadsheets, we're crunching numbers, we're really working on writing things out. And then we go back into the fertile void. So that's really preparing us for the spaciousness of being inward. And I know it feels challenging to take away, but this is that old model that we're dismantling, that more is better. And when we create the space, we're actually able to connect to what's next, what's most important. Does this task need to be done by me? Does it need to be done right now? Does it need to be done at all? And that's where we get more confident in delegation and just taking things off the calendar and saying, this isn't happening this quarter and it's not meant to. And that's really where the trust starts to come in of, okay, less means more.
Yeah. And it's a practice. And I love that you presence the, like, just do one thing. you know, because the voices, right? The corporate voices are like, yeah, but we have a 10 million, whatever your goal is, right? Revenue, we have a revenue goal to hit Q1. How can I take all of these things off the plate? So I think that's where it's important of like, talking of control, you can kind of control your space, your environment. So if there's one thing you can do, and maybe it's try the week that you are bleeding to just take as minimal meetings as possible. That could be a good start. I don't know if you have any other tips around like good first starts that could be supportive.
Yeah, there was something that came through. Oh, I like if and that, yeah, exactly. Just where do you have more autonomy, right? Like some of you might be CEOs and some of you, you know, might have a boss and you might not feel like you have as much autonomy, but you're absolutely able, you know, just pick one thing. If there's a meeting, for example, and it's not time sensitive, can you look and say, okay, the old me feels like I need to schedule it this week. But what if you create the space and it's not urgent and it gets to happen in 2 weeks? Like, what would that space look like? So I would say start with something that you feel like you have more flexibility over. Even if it can't be in your profession, maybe it's even in the form of meal prep. Maybe it's in the form of cooking, like, right? Where can I ask for more help? Or where do I know, wow, I'm not set up to be cooking this week and doing all of these things for my family and picking up from soccer? Where can I ask my significant other? Where can I ask a friend who's going to the same, you know, sporting event, right? This is where we really get to look at what's coming through. And I think what I love about the cycles, just like, right, we're in spring now, we're seeing all the rebirth, all the renewal. This is how it gets us out of that linear thinking that there's literally never enough time and we're running out of time and there's always going to be more. When we're more in the cyclic thinking, it feels better. Like, okay, I get to tackle that next month when I'm fully resourced and replenished. And you'll start to notice that you actually have a lot more time and you feel better and your relationships begin to thrive more. And you'll start to notice other people in your life starting to shift, wanting to support you, right? Knowing, ooh, wow, Lindsay really does well during this time, or this is really working. So this is how we actually can create a new paradigm in the workplace without even needing to explain to our bosses what's really going on, right? But this is how we can actually shift the paradigm of this is a new way that actually supports moving forward so that we can have the numbers coming in and we can meet our deadlines and our goals.
Yeah, I love that. And again, it's being that in which you want to see in others, you know. That's the key of all of you here, you're change makers, right? And we get to start that leadership no matter where you're at in your career or your vocation. And I just think there's so much available once you try it on. So then you can, like you said, come from a full cup. So then it is overflowing because you can't see now what's available for you unless you release to receive, to then allow that capacity that Lindsay's talking about to then receive the magic. You know, we kind of talk about magic. It's like you can't see what's not here until there is action required. And then who knows what's on the other side. Could be the promotion, could be the role you've literally dreamed about forever and ever, or the relationship, or all the things.
Yeah, and this space is so important, right? Just like with the breath, we can't just keep inhaling, inhaling, inhaling. We can't just be in spring and summer, spring and summer, spring and summer. Eventually, what do? We come back to center. Eventually, we exhale. Eventually, we create the pause. And so I just want a presence. It is a revolutionary act to shift in this way and to think this way and to try it on. But when we actually start to understand, well, it makes so much sense. Again, it's modeled to us everywhere. Like we don't just have springtime and things are just blooming, 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 and we don't have, right? Like, no, there's a season. And when we can really start to be in the like, I'm plateauing and it's meant to be this way so that I can create more capacity so that I could see what's next. And I mean, it's such a beautiful place to be. And I know if you're watching this, you want more capacity, right? So that we can hold more, so that we can create more change, more shifts, right? So that we could be of service. And this is the secret sauce to being able to hold more. And it's uncomfortable at times and it feels off at times because we're completely dissolving an old way of being. But I promise the other side is so worth it.
Yes, it's the dissolve. It's the dissolve. As we wrap this, I'm curious, talking of curiosity, do you have anything, if you tune in to the audience, all of you out there, anything that you want to share? Any last final piece?
Yeah, I think what's really coming through is curiosity and wonderment. If we can be in curiosity and wonderment, that removes the frustration, that removes the lack and the scarcity and the fear of trying things on, right? Like when we can think of work, what's coming through is work instead of work. Can we look at it as exploration, right? Like everything is work, right? Our profession, as we're expanding personal development, moving through life with our loved ones, can we be an exploration knowing that all that we're creating in our life is meant for evolution, is meant for us to grow, is meant for us to be closer to love and joy and freedom. And so when we can go back to, what would it look like? You know, that's come up a lot with us. I think you'll find that there'll be a lot less resistance and it'll be a lot easier for you to move through and try on some of these practices that we shared here today.
Love it, love it, love it. And you have some really special, you mentioned one earlier. It sounds like you all are getting a second gift because Lindsay has one gift, but you know what happens when you open up to receiving? Sometimes more comes in. So what are your gifts for all of those of you out there watching?
Yeah, I think I'll share the one that came through today. I have multiple gifts because, you know, multiple offerings come through to support. And it's a video series. It's a 4-part video series with a guide that actually will help you move through, you know, syncing with your body, syncing with hormonally what's happening so that you can feel resourced and supported through all of those phases. I even give examples of personal life, like when to have date night, when to work out, what type of workout to do, foods that can actually nourish you and support you, and obviously vocation wise, what tasks to perform. And so that's the cycle syncing guide and video series. And then what originally was going to come through is my Awaken Woman archetypal quiz, which really just kind of helps you come home to who am I at my core essence, and how am I meant to show up energetically to serve, right? All of us play a role here. So again, it kind of helps you hone into what are my gifts, what are my strengths, who am I, how am I meant to show up, how am I meant to support. And so I think both of those could be really fun, but the cycle thinking guide is actually feeling like, as it was a topic of conversation, that could really support the women in corporate at this time.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for all of that. I know all of you out there watching are like, frantically probably going to click to find out more. So I appreciate you. Thank you for your time and your wisdom today.
So grateful to be here.
For all of you out there watching, sending you so many blessings, and go create some magic. If your heart was expanding and opening and you were loving all of the information and tips shared with you on today's interview, you can simply click the button here on this page to connect with and get more access to today's expert. And if you do have this knocking at your soul for this vision that is longing to be birthed, be brought into creation, so you can live this new reality that you're longing for, I would be honored and so grateful to support you, be your biggest believer in this creation process. And in this, I have a gift for you, a 30-minute clarity section. So you can connect with this vision and you can receive clarity around this life that your soul is longing for you to be living on your journey. To book this call, just click the button down below to schedule this free 30-minute clarity session gift from me to you. So grateful for your time and that you are here on this journey because you're a change maker. You are a change maker. Sending you so much love today and excited to hear more about this vision that you are longing for.